Why, when, and how should you document your sources? Let's look at this right now. Why should you document your sources? And most of the information that you're going to see on this slide and the next slide come from Turabian's A Manual for Writers, 7th edition, edited by Booth, Cullum, and Williams, pages 133 to 134. So, why should you cite your sources? The very first and most important reason is to give credit where it's due. Remember what Bob Dylan said, that stealing from one author is plagiarism, but stealing from multiple authors is research. Well, it is if you are giving credit where it's due. I had this conversation a little earlier today with a student in a business class who was writing a paper that I had helped him kind of set up and frame. And he was running into this problem that he felt like he was stealing. And my response to him was, in the academic community, if you're not borrowing our ideas to generate new ideas, then we get hurt. So we don't like to use the word stealing, so let's call it borrowing. But when you borrow things, you have to give credit where they came from. Historians also claim that we try to use the scientific method, or that we at least emulate the scientific method. And because, unlike hard scientists, we cannot conduct experimentation that other people can replicate, then by showing where we did get our information, then other people can go to that information and figure out what it was that we were doing. Giving credit where it's due is an issue of fairness to the researchers that have come before you, and it prevents charges of plagiarism. Plagiarism is so serious a problem. I don't mean that it's so widespread, though it is, but it's such an egregious violation of academic honesty that I will do an entire lecture on plagiarism. Yes, it'll be a short lecture, but I've carved that out to do a single lecture on. So citing your sources helps to prevent a charge of plagiarism. Citing your sources assures your readers that your work has validity, that is, the data is accurate. It allows your readers to check your sources, to extend, as Booth, Cullum, and Williams say, your research. They can look at your research for themselves. They can attempt to replicate or see at least where you got your ideas from. They can mine your footnotes, or they can pillage your bibliography. Documenting your sources through citations also shows the extent to which you have consulted the academic literature. It allows readers to know what historical model you're following. It increases your veracity and trustworthiness, and it affects the reader's confidence in your conclusions. So, you cite sources to give credit, to assure the readers about your accuracy. It allows them to check your sources, to extend their own work, and it shows the extent to which you have consulted the literature, as well as it affects their confidence in you. Okay. There are 3 times when you should cite your sources. Whenever you take a quotation, and in our last lecture we talked about limiting your quotations and how you should handle those quotations, but whenever you take a quotation, you must use both quotation marks and citations. Otherwise, you've probably committed plagiarism, deliberately or inadvertently. Another time to cite is when you paraphrase ideas, whether they're from a single source or multiple sources. If you've taken ideas from someone else and paraphrased what that author said about those ideas, then you must cite. When you use concepts or ideas or data or any other material from another source or multiple sources, you must cite that documentation. You must cite those sources. And you may say, well, that means that every sentence is going to have a citation. Okay. In that case, why don't you put a citation, except for the quotations, at the end of the paragraph and put all of the citations for that paragraph into a single complex footnote. Don't think of complex as meaning hard to deal with. All you have to do is to put in the citations and connect them with a semicolon. You can also use, although you don't have to cite here, you can also use citations to alert your readers to sources that they might want to use. And that is, if you see the same information or the same interpretation in 2 or 3 or 4 sources, then rather than just citing one, cite them all in a compound footnote, a complex footnote. And that will alert your readers to multiple places that they can find the information they're seeking. Think about that, and that's a pretty sophisticated move to put into your bag of tricks. Now, how do you cite? Well, in a couple of lectures from now, we'll get more into the specific components of citations, the most common types. But right now, I want to talk about the citation systems and the kind we use and the kind that I don't want you to use. In reality, using Turabian, which is one of many style sheets, APA, MLA, Harvard, Turabian, which is University of Chicago, and every journal has its own style sheet. Turabian, again, is simply one of many mechanisms to format your paper. One of the most important components of formatting is how you deal with your citations. Now, we in history use the notes bibliography style of citations. That is, when you cite the work the first time, you put in a full citation. You denote in the text where that source is used by putting in a superscript number. And as you can see here, that's the little number at the top of the line. Then you go to that number, and if you're inserting it with like Microsoft Word or something like that, it will usually just send you directly to the bottom of the page. Then you can type in your citation. Now, the deal with the notes bibliography style is that the notes stand on their own, because the first time you use a source, you cite the entire source. We'll talk about subsequent citations later. That means that in a short paper, you usually don't have a bibliography. There's no reason to have one. The notes stand on their own. I'm asking you to do a bibliography because of the exercise of doing a bibliography. This course is designed to walk you through a whole bunch of different skills, and learning how to do a bibliography is one of those skills. Okay, the notes can stand on their own. They do not require a bibliography to make sense. Now, there is another style of citations, and that is called the reference list. Some of you might think of it as the MLA style or the APA style. in which, where you want to cite your source, you, in the text, insert a parenthetical reference to the author's name, the year of publication, and the page number. Well, by itself, that doesn't make any sense. You have to have the works cited page in order for anyone to be able to find the work you're looking or you're citing. They have to reference from that parenthetical statement to the works cited page. Now, why doesn't everybody use a superscript number? Well, let me tell you that the reference list style came along when we still used typewriters. How many people could figure out how much room to leave at the bottom of a page to insert how many citations? Only professional typists could figure that out. And it was, let me guarantee you, a royal pain in the neck, and sometimes much lower, to figure out how to insert footnotes. So we developed two things to allow typists to deal more effectively with citations. One was the endnote citation, in which all of the citations are listed at the end of the paper. The other was the reference list style, in which, in lieu of a superscript number, authors would simply write in a parentheses, author's name, date, page number, close parentheses, and then at the end of the paper write a works cited page that had a bibliography-like listing of all of the works. We do not use that form in history. Some historians do, but I disagree with them. We use the notes bibliography style, and this is made much, much simpler by the ability of word processing programs to automatically insert footnotes. Now, what does a notes bibliography style of citation look like? Consider this short passage that I just made up. This footnote is real and the quote is real. But you can see that I've said blah, 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 blah. Jules Benjamin, an authority on historical method, gives this good advice. Quote, when writing about historical events, use the past tense, unquote. And you can see at the very end of that page to the left, the small superscript 1. At the bottom of that page, then would appear the footnote that you see on the right-hand side. Jules R. Benjamin, comma, A Student's Guide to History, italicized, comma, 9th edition, period. That's just because it's an abbreviation. Open parentheses, place of publication is Boston, colon, double space, Bedford St. Martin's, which is the name of the publisher, comma, 2004, close parentheses, comma, 60, and because that's the end of that single footnote, period. Okay, let's go over it quickly. Why do you cite sources? To give credit, to assure the readers of your validity, to allow readers to check your sources, and to show the extent to which you've been influenced by the historiography. When do you cite? When you have a quotation and include quotation marks, when you paraphrase, and when you use any concept, idea, data, or any other material directly from one or more sources. What kind of citation system do we use? We use the notes bibliography style. That is a superscript number where the citation refers to. Then the citation in a particular order. The bibliography comes at the end of the work, and it has a slightly different arrangement of elements. We'll talk about that slightly later. And thank you for your attention as always.